The silent weapon. The Galactic Coalition chamber hummed with tension as Ambassador Thrix of the Lorani species adjusted his breathing apparatus. He stared at the holographic display showing the advancing Drex fleet. 3 border worlds had already fallen, with dozens more in jeopardy. The Coalition's finest military units had been decimated within days. "We've exhausted conventional options," said Admiral Nexala, her blue-scaled face grim in the dim light. "The Drex are operating outside all established combat protocols. They're targeting civilian centers first. They're executing prisoners." Thrix clicked his mandibles nervously. "And the safekeepers?" "Overwhelmed," Nexala replied. "Their drones can't match the Drex's biological warfare adaptations." "Then we have no choice," the Vizier of Telshar said, the oldest and most respected member of the Coalition Council. His many eyes blinked simultaneously, a sign of grave concern among his kind. "We must invoke the Awakening Protocol." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. "The humans." Thrix's voice trembled. "Surely we're not that desperate." The Vizier's skin dimmed to a deep indigo. "We haven't been this desperate in 2 centuries. Not since the Cygnus collapse." Admiral Nexala straightened her uniform. "I'll make the call to Earth. May the cosmos forgive us." Commander Elise Vega stood at the viewport of Outpost Epsilon, staring at the distant stars. For 6 years, she had served as Earth's military advisor to the Coalition forces stationed here, teaching tactics and strategy to alien species who would never use them in actual combat. It was a glorified teaching position, one of the few roles humans were permitted in galactic warfare after the infamous Nexus incident. 200 years ago, humanity had been deemed too dangerous, too unpredictable, and too effective at warfare. The Treaty of Proxima had confined human military personnel to advisory roles, prohibited from direct combat operations. Her comm unit chimed. "Earth Central Command." Commander Vega, the holographic figure of General Harmon, appeared, his weathered face grave. "The Coalition has invoked the Awakening Protocol." Vega's blood ran cold. The Awakening Protocol, a theoretical emergency measure that would temporarily suspend the Treaty of Proxima, allowing human military forces to engage in direct combat operations. It had never been used before. "Sir, are you certain?" "The implications." "I'm aware of the implications, Commander." "The Drex Armada has broken through Coalition defenses in the Orion Arm. They're slaughtering civilians and executing prisoners. Coalition forces are in full retreat." Vega swallowed hard. "What are my orders, sir?" "Assemble a combat team. You've got 50 humans stationed across the sector in advisory roles. Get them to Outpost Kandara. That's where we're making our stand." The Coalition approved this. Reluctantly. "They're desperate." General Harmon's expression darkened. "Vega, listen carefully. You know why humans were banned from galactic warfare. Don't make them regret this decision." The transmission ended, leaving Vega with a hollow feeling in her stomach. The Drex were ruthless, genetically modified predators who had evolved on a world with 16 times Earth's gravity. They had somehow acquired advanced technology and launched a campaign of expansion and extermination. And now humanity was being unleashed against them. Captain Darius Chen hadn't fired a weapon in anger in 12 years. Like all human military personnel assigned to Coalition space, he served as an instructor, teaching alien species combat techniques they would never fully implement due to biological or cultural constraints. When Vega's message arrived, he knew immediately what it meant. He packed his kit and was aboard the first transport to Kandara Station. "Never thought I'd see the day," said Lieutenant Rosa Diaz as she settled into the seat beside him. Her eyes gleamed with something between excitement and apprehension. "Think the stories about Nexus scared them enough?" Chen nodded grimly. "They're terrified, but they're more scared of the Drex right now." The transport bay filled with humans, military advisors from across the sector, summoned by Commander Vega's activation code. Some knew each other, others were strangers. All carried the same expression: the controlled alertness of predators awakening from forced hibernation. Commander Vega entered the bay, and the room fell silent. Her presence commanded respect, not through intimidation, but through competence. At 38, she was the most senior human military officer in the sector. "You all know why you're here," she said, her voice carrying across the bay without needing amplification. "The Drex Armada has broken coalition lines. 3 worlds have fallen. Billions are dead or enslaved. Coalition forces are in retreat." She activated a holographic display showing the tactical situation. The Drex fleet, represented by pulsing red markers, had cut a swath through coalition space, bypassing military installations to target civilian worlds. "The coalition has invoked the Awakening Protocol. For the first time in 2 centuries, human military personnel are authorized for direct combat operations." She paused, surveying the room. "I know some of you have been waiting for this day. Others hoped it would never come. Whatever your feelings, remember this: the galaxy is watching. How we conduct ourselves in this conflict will determine humanity's place in the coalition for generations to come." Chen felt a chill run down his spine. They all knew the stories of the Nexus incident, how human special forces had annihilated an entire invasion fleet, exterminating a species in the process. The brutality had shocked the galaxy, leading to the Treaty of Proxima. "Our mission is defensive," Vega continued. "We'll establish a perimeter around Canberra Station and hold it against Drex forces. We're the last line of defense. If Canberra falls, the entire Orion arm falls with it." She displayed images of the enemy, heavy-set bipeds with thick, armor-like skin. Their eyes were adapted for hunting, with nictitating membranes that protected against flash weapons. Their muscle density was 3 times that of humans. "The Drex evolved on a high-gravity world. They're stronger than we are. Faster. Their exoskeletons can deflect standard-issue coalition weapons, but they've never faced humans before." Chen saw the cold determination in Vega's eyes. They all understood what was left unsaid. The Drex had never faced an enemy that fought like humans. Canberra Station hung in space like a gleaming jewel, a massive habitat housing 3 million refugees from the worlds already fallen to the Drex. Shaped like a giant wheel, it rotated slowly to generate artificial gravity in its outer ring. As Commander Vega's shuttle approached, she could see coalition defense ships positioned in a protective formation. The ships were elegant, streamlined vessels, designed for efficiency and minimal loss of life. Coalition warfare had evolved toward precision strikes and capture operations, not the total warfare that humans had mastered. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said Major James Harper, her newly appointed second-in-command. "Hard to believe we're about to turn it into a battleground." "We're not turning it into anything," Vega replied sharply. "The Drex made that decision when they launched their assault." Harper nodded, appropriately chastened. "Of course, Commander." The shuttle docked with the station, and Vega was greeted by Ambassador Thrix himself, flanked by coalition security forces who regarded the humans with undisguised apprehension. "Commander Vega," Thrix said, his translator converting the clicks and whistles of his native language. "We are grateful for your assistance in this crisis." Vega recognized the carefully chosen diplomatic language. "My team is ready to establish a defensive perimeter around the station. We'll need access to your weapon systems and tactical data." Thrix's compound eyes flashed with alarm. "The Council has stipulated that human forces operate only in designated sectors. We cannot grant full access to station systems." Vega kept her expression neutral, though anger flared within her. "Ambassador, if you want us to defend this station, we need to be able to coordinate with all defensive systems. The Treaty of Proxima specifically prohibits. The Awakening Protocol supersedes the Treaty of Proxima." Vega cut in. "You asked for our help. Let us provide it." Thrix's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Very well. Limited access will be granted, but coalition observers will monitor all human operations." "Understood." As they walked through the station's corridors, Vega noticed how other species gave them a wide berth. Some watched with curiosity, others with fear. 2 centuries of stories about human warfare had created an almost mythological status for Earth's military capabilities. Little did they know, Vega thought, that the stories were pale shadows of the truth. The first Drex attack came 12 hours after the human team had established their defensive positions. Lieutenant Dias spotted the approaching ships on long-range sensors, sleek, predatory vessels accelerating toward Canberra Station with engines blazing. Coalition Defense Command reports 36 attack vessels. She reported to Commander Vega in the makeshift command center. Estimated time to engagement, 18 minutes. Vega studied the tactical display. The Coalition Defense Fleet was moving into position, but their formations were predictable, designed for a type of warfare that the Drex had already proven they could counter. "Get me a direct channel to Admiral Nexela," she ordered. The Admiral's holographic image appeared, her scales shimmering with stress pigmentation. "Commander Vega, we're deploying according to standard defensive protocols. With respect, Admiral, those protocols haven't worked against the Drex so far. I recommend you adopt a more flexible formation. Allow my tactical officers to coordinate with your ships." Nexela hesitated. "That would violate. People are dying, Admiral. Worlds are falling. Is protocol more important than survival?" After a long moment, Nexela nodded. "Very well. Your tactical officers may advise our fleet commanders." Within minutes, Captain Chen was transmitting new formation orders to the Coalition fleet. Instead of the standard defensive sphere, the ships broke into smaller, more mobile groups that could adapt rapidly to Drex attack patterns. "They're approaching weapons range," Dias reported. "All stations, prepare for combat," Vega ordered. "Remember your training. Remember why we're here." The first wave of Drex vessels launched their attack, energy weapons blazing across the void of space. Coalition ships responded with precision fire, guided by human tactical advisors who introduced randomized evasive patterns and coordinated targeting. For the first time since the Drex invasion began, the Coalition forces were holding their own. But Vega knew it was only the beginning. She watched the tactical display with growing concern as more Drex ships appeared at the edge of sensor range. "They're bringing reinforcements," Harper observed. "A lot of them." Vega nodded grimly. They didn't expect resistance. Now they're adjusting. She opened a channel to all human personnel. "All units, prepare for extended operations. The real fight is just beginning." Ambassador Thrix and the Coalition Council watched the battle unfold from their secure chamber deep within Canberra Station. The tactical display showed the human coordinated defense stopping the Drex advance, something no purely Coalition force had managed. "They fight differently," observed the Vizier of Telshar. "Look at their tactical decisions." Thrix nodded uneasily. "They accept higher casualty rates than our commanders would, but they're effective." The Drex fleet had expected to overwhelm the station's defenses quickly, as they had at previous engagements. Instead, they faced a defense that adapted continuously, that anticipated their strategies, that matched their aggression with calculated counterattacks. "The human commander has requested authorization to deploy their special operations teams," Frick said, his voice strained. "They want to board the Drex command vessel." The council chamber fell silent. Boarding actions were rare in Coalition warfare. Too unpredictable, too violent, too likely to result in unnecessary casualties. The Treaty of Proxima explicitly forbids human forces from engaging in offensive operations, one counselor said. "This is not an offensive operation," the Vizier replied. "It is a targeted strike to disable the enemy command structure." "It is still humans engaging in direct combat," Fricks argued. "If we allow this, where do we draw the line?" The Vizier's skin pulsed with grave concern. "We drew the line when we invoked the Awakening Protocol. We cannot half-awaken the sleeping predator." After further debate, the Council reluctantly granted approval. Fricks transmitted the authorization to Commander Vega's command center, his mandibles clicking with anxiety. On the tactical display, a small shuttle detached from Canberra Station and accelerated toward the Drex fleet. Inside were 12 human operatives, the first to engage in direct combat operations against an alien species in 2 centuries. Thrix watched with growing apprehension. They had awakened something ancient and terrible. The galaxy was about to remember why humans had been banned from the battlefield. And the Drex were about to learn the price of victory. The assault shuttle cut through space like a blade, its stealth systems rendering it nearly invisible against the backdrop of the chaotic battle. Inside, 12 humans sat in grim silence, checking their weapons with practiced precision. Major James Harper studied his team. These weren't the fresh-faced recruits of the regular military. These were seasoned veterans, chosen specifically for this mission. People who had fought in Earth's scattered conflicts, who understood the dark art of close-quarters combat. 2 minutes to contact, the pilot announced. Harper activated his tactical display, showing the Drex command vessel, a massive ship bristling with weapons. "Remember the objective," he said. "We disable their command and control systems, plant the virus in their network, and extract. No unnecessary engagements." The team nodded. They understood the stakes. This wasn't just about defeating the Drex. It was about proving that humans could fight with restraint, that the Treaty of Proxima had been an overreaction. The shuttle's magnetic clamps engaged silently against the hull of the Drex vessel. Cutting tools deployed, carving a path through the outer armor. Within moments, they were inside. The first humans to set foot on an enemy vessel in centuries. The ship's interior was hot and humid, adapted for Drex physiology. The corridors were wider and taller than human standards, bathed in a reddish light that cast long shadows. Harper signaled his team to activate their enhanced vision systems. "Movement ahead," whispered Lieutenant Quan, the team's scout. 3 Drex, heavily armed. Harper nodded. "Non-lethal if possible. We need to reach the command center quietly." The team moved with practiced stealth, their footsteps silent on the metal deck. As they approached the junction, Harper gave the signal. 3 team members stepped forward, firing neural disruptors that targeted the Drex nervous system. 2 Drex collapsed immediately. The third, larger than its companions, roared in rage and charge. Corporal Rodriguez stepped forward, firing a focused electromagnetic pulse that finally dropped the massive alien. "Their nervous systems are more resistant than intelligence suggested," Rodriguez reported, checking his weapon settings. "Increasing power by 30%. Harper frowned. Higher power meant higher risk of permanent damage. But they needed to move quickly. "Authorized. Let's move." The team progressed deeper into the ship, encountering more resistance as they approached the command center. Each engagement was brief, efficient, and controlled. Harper watched his soldiers with a mixture of pride and concern. They were executing flawlessly, perhaps too flawlessly. When they reached the command center, they found it heavily defended. 20 Drex warriors formed a perimeter around the entrance, their weapons trained on the single approach corridor. "We can't take them head-on without casualties," Quan observed. Harper studied the tactical display. "We don't have to." He pointed to a maintenance shaft that ran parallel to the command center. "Rodriguez, Morgan, prepare breaching charges here and here. The rest of you, ready shock grenades." The plan worked perfectly. The breaching charges blew 2 holes in the command center's sidewalls, allowing the team to toss in shock grenades before the Drex could react. By the time the team stormed in through 3 entry points, most of the defenders were incapacitated. The few remaining Drex fought ferociously. One tackled Sergeant Wei, its massive claws tearing at her armor. Private Alvarez fired 3 precise shots, dropping the alien before it could inflict serious injury. "Command center secure," Harper reported. "Deploying virus now." Tech specialist Murray connected to the Drex systems, uploading the virus that would cripple not just this ship, but potentially the entire Drex fleet. Virus deployed. Their systems are beginning to fail. Harper nodded in satisfaction. Mission accomplished. Let's extract. As they made their way back to the extraction point, Harper couldn't help but feel a growing unease. The mission had been too clean, too efficient. The humans had moved through the Drex vessel like ghosts, neutralizing any opposition with surgical precision. This was what the Coalition feared, not human barbarity, but human effectiveness. The cold efficiency with which they executed violence. When they reached the shuttle, Harper looked back at the Drex vessel. Already, its weapons had fallen silent. Its engines were failing. One surgical strike had accomplished what an entire Coalition fleet could not. And that was precisely the problem. Commander Vega watched the tactical display as the Drex command vessel drifted, powerless. Throughout the fleet, other Drex ships were experiencing similar failures as the virus spread through their networked systems. "The boarding team has returned," Lieutenant Diaz reported. "All personnel accounted for." Vega nodded, allowing herself a moment of relief. Casualties. Minor injuries only. The Drex never knew what hit them. Around the command center, human operators monitored the battle with intense focus. Coalition officers watched in silence, their expressions a mixture of awe and unease. "The Drex fleet is in disarray," Captain Chen reported. "Their coordination has collapsed. Individual ships are either retreating or launching desperate attacks." Vega opened a channel to the Coalition Defense Command. "Admiral Nexala, the Drex command structure has been neutralized. I recommend focused strikes on their remaining combat vessels." Admiral Nexala's image appeared, her scales now showing the blue coloration of surprise. "Your boarding team was effective, Commander. More than we anticipated." "We can discuss that later," Vega replied firmly. "Right now, we need to press our advantage." The Admiral hesitated, then nodded. "Coalition forces will engage remaining Drex vessels. But, Commander, the Council is concerned about the methods your team employed." "My team completed their mission with minimal casualties on both sides," Vega said coldly. "If the Council has concerns, they can raise them after the battle is won." The communication ended, leaving Vega with a familiar frustration. The Coalition wanted human help but feared human methods. They wanted the protection without acknowledging the protectors. "Commander," Diaz interrupted her thoughts. "Long-range sensors are detecting a new wave of Drex vessels, much larger than the first." Vega studied the readings with growing concern. The approaching force was massive, at least 3 times the size of the fleet they had just defeated. The virus might not work a second time. The Drex would have adapted. "They're bringing everything they have," she murmured. Captain Chen stood beside her, his expression grim. "Standard Coalition tactics won't work against a force that size." Vega knew he was right. The Coalition's precise, measured approach to warfare, shaped by centuries of fighting without humans, was too conservative for this threat. "Contact Earth Command," she ordered. "Request authorization for full combat protocols." Chen's eyes widened slightly. "Full combat protocols? The Council will never approve that." "They don't have to," Vega replied. "The Awakening Protocol gives Earth Command operational authority in extreme situations." As Chen turned to carry out the order, Vega felt the weight of history on her shoulders. Full combat protocols meant removing the restrictions that had been placed on human warfare after the Nexus incident. It meant fighting the way humans had always fought, with all the terrible effectiveness that had frightened the galaxy. Ambassador Thrix burst into the Coalition Council chamber, his exoskeleton clicking with agitation. "The humans have requested authorization for full combat protocols," he announced. The council chamber erupted in alarmed chatter. The vizier raised his appendages for silence. "What exactly are full combat protocols?" he asked quietly. Thrix's compound eyes flashed with anxiety. "According to our intelligence, it refers to unrestricted warfare methods developed before the Treaty of Proxima, tactics that were specifically banned. Like those used at Nexus," one counselor whispered. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. Every species in the Coalition knew about Nexus. 2 centuries ago, a savage species called the Chitar had launched an unprovoked attack on human colonies. The human response had been so overwhelming, so utterly devastating, that it had shocked the galactic community. The Chittar had been reduced to a pre-industrial population on a single world, their fleet and technology completely destroyed. Billions had died. "We cannot allow it," Thrix insisted. "The treaty exists for a reason." The vizier's skin pulsed with deep colors of concern. "And yet, the Drex are approaching with a fleet 3 times larger than the first. If Kandera falls, what then?" "There must be another way," Thrix pleaded. "Is there?" The vizier turned to the tactical display. "The Drex have shown no interest in negotiation. They've exterminated entire populations. They're coming to destroy this station and kill every refugee we're protecting." Another counselor, a Thessi with luminescent tendrils, spoke up. "Perhaps we should observe what full combat protocols entail before condemning them." The human team's boarding action was effective and relatively bloodless. Thrix clicked his mandibles in agitation. The boarding action was a controlled operation. Full combat protocols would be something else entirely. Nevertheless, the vizier said firmly, "We invoke the awakening protocol. We cannot now complain that the sleeper has fully awakened." After further debate, the council reluctantly agreed not to interfere with Earth Command's decision. Thrix left the chamber with a sense of foreboding. He had studied human history extensively, particularly their warfare. He knew what they were capable of. The galaxy was about to be reminded. Major Harper stood in the hangar bay, watching as engineers modified coalition fighters with human weapon systems. The authorization for full combat protocols had come through an hour ago, and the preparations were well underway. "This feels familiar," said Lieutenant Quan, stopping beside him. "Like opening a door we swore would stay closed." Harper nodded grimly. "The Nexus incident may have happened 2 centuries ago, but the memories are still fresh for many of us." Quan's expression was troubled. "I studied the records. The scale of destruction. Is that what we're planning here?" "No," Harper said firmly. "Nexus was different. That was vengeance, pure and simple. This is defense, but using the same methods." Harper couldn't answer immediately. The truth was complex. Human warfare had evolved over thousands of years of conflict on Earth. It wasn't just about technology or tactics. It was a mindset, an approach to combat that other species found difficult to comprehend. "We fight to win," he said finally, "completely and decisively. The coalition fights to maintain balance, to minimize losses. That's the fundamental difference." Across the hangar, Commander Vega was briefing coalition pilots on the modified fighters. Her expression was determined, focused. Harper knew she felt the weight of responsibility, not just for the defense of Kandera Station, but for humanity's reputation in the galaxy. "I wonder if they'll ever trust us again after this," Quan murmured. Harper's gaze hardened as he watched the preparations. Trust isn't what keeps the peace. Fear does. The Drex fleet emerged from hyperspace in a vast armada that filled the viewports of Kandera Station. Hundreds of warships, ranging from small attack craft to massive dreadnoughts, formed a wall of approaching destruction. In the command center, Commander Vega stood before the tactical display, issuing orders with calm precision. Around her, human operators coordinated with coalition forces, implementing strategies that had been forbidden for 2 centuries. "Deploy EMP satellites at these coordinates," she ordered. "Prepare nuclear mines along these approach vectors." Coalition officers watched in silence as humans executed warfare on a scale they had never witnessed. The defensive perimeter around Kandera wasn't just a line of ships. It was a layered death trap, designed to fragment and destroy the approaching enemy. "First wave of Drex ships approaching the outer perimeter," reported Captain Chen. Vega nodded. "Activate the minefield." Space itself seemed to erupt as hundreds of nuclear mines detonated simultaneously. The electromagnetic pulse disabled Drex systems, leaving their ships drifting helplessly into the path of coalition laser batteries. "Second wave incoming," Chen reported. "They're adapting, avoiding the mine patterns." Launch Shiva missiles, Vega ordered. The Shiva missiles, named after the Hindu god of destruction, were a human weapons system that had been specifically banned by the Treaty of Proxima. Each missile contained multiple warheads that could track individual targets, overwhelming defensive systems through sheer numbers. The coalition officers watched in stunned silence as the missiles decimated the second wave of Drex ships. This wasn't the measured, precise warfare they were accustomed to. This was overwhelming force, applied with calculated ruthlessness. The Drex are launching boarding pods at the station, Lieutenant Diaz reported. Intercept with defense drones, Vega ordered. Deploy human security teams to any breaches. As the battle intensified, the differences between human and coalition approaches to warfare became starkly apparent. Coalition commanders sought to disable enemy vessels where possible. Human tactics focused on complete destruction of enemy assets. Commander, Chen said quietly, Earth Command has authorized the Prometheus Protocol. Vega's expression hardened. The Prometheus Protocol was the most extreme measure in humanity's arsenal, a targeted singularity weapon that could create a localized gravitational collapse. It had been used only once before, during the Nexus incident. Understood, she said after a moment. Prepare the weapon, but hold for my order. Ambassador Thrix, who had been observing from the side of the command center, stepped forward in alarm. Commander Vega, what is this Prometheus Protocol? Vega met his gaze steadily. It's a weapon of last resort, Ambassador. One we hope not to use. I must consult with the Council, Thrix said, his mandibles clicking rapidly. There's no time for consultation, Vega replied. The Drex are pushing through our defenses. If they reach this station, 3 million refugees die. As if to emphasize her point, the station shuddered under the impact of a Drex weapon. Warning lights flashed across the command center. Hull breach on level 37, reported a coalition officer. Emergency containment failing. Deploy Team Bravo to level 37, Vega ordered. Then, to Thrix. Ambassador, this is what the Awakening Protocol means. This is what you asked for when you called for human help. Thrix stared at the tactical display, watching as human combat teams engaged Drex boarding parties with brutal efficiency. This was the terrible truth that the Coalition had tried to forget, that humans were weapons themselves, honed by millennia of warfare against their own kind. The main Drex fleet is still advancing, Chen reported. Our defensive line is collapsing in sectors 3 and 7. Vega studied the tactical situation for a long moment. The Drex outnumbered them significantly. Despite the effectiveness of human tactics, sheer numbers would eventually overwhelm them. Prepare the Prometheus weapon, she said finally. Target the Drex flagship. Commander, please, Thrix pleaded. Such a weapon. We'll save this station and everyone on it. Vega cut him off. This is war, Ambassador. This is why you awakened us. As the Prometheus weapon was prepared, Vega opened a channel to the Drex fleet. Attention Drex forces. This is Commander Elise Vega of Earth. You have one opportunity to withdraw from this system. Failure to comply will result in your destruction. There was no response. The Drex continued their advance, their weapons firing continuously at the Coalition defense line. They're not going to retreat, Chen observed. No, Vega agreed. They don't understand what they're facing. She turned to the weapons officer. Deploy the Prometheus weapon. A small, unassuming missile launched from Kandara Station. It accelerated toward the Drex flagship, easily evading their defensive fire. When it detonated, there was no explosion, just a momentary distortion of space. Then the Drex flagship began to collapse in on itself, compressed by an artificial gravitational singularity. Ships nearby were dragged toward it, unable to escape the growing gravitational well. Within moments, a significant portion of the Drex fleet had been consumed. The command center was silent as they watched the destruction. The remaining Drex vessels began to retreat, finally understanding the nature of the enemy they faced. The Drex are withdrawing from the system, Chen reported, his voice subdued. Vega nodded, feeling no triumph. Stand down from combat alert. Begin damage assessment and casualty reports. Ambassador Thrix stared at the tactical display, at the empty space where dozens of Drex ships had been moments before. This is why the Treaty of Proxima exists, he whispered. Yes, Vega agreed quietly. Now you remember. 2 weeks later, Commander Vega stood before the Coalition Council. The emergency had passed. The Drex had withdrawn from Coalition space entirely, sending envoys to negotiate a peace treaty. The Council acknowledges that Earth's intervention was decisive in repelling the Drex invasion, the Vizier stated formally. Humanity has once again demonstrated its unique capabilities in warfare. Vega stood at attention, her uniform immaculate. Earth stands ready to assist our allies when called upon, she replied diplomatically. Yes, the Vizier said slowly. That is precisely what concerns us. The reactivation of human combat protocols, while effective, has raised troubling questions about the future of galactic security. Ambassador Thrix stepped forward. The Council proposes an amendment to the Treaty of Proxima. Human military forces would remain restricted from general combat operations, but a specialized response unit would be established, under strict coalition oversight, to address extreme threats. Vega considered this carefully. It was a compromise, one that acknowledged humanity's capabilities while maintaining the safeguards that the coalition deemed necessary. Earth will consider this proposal, she said finally. As she left the council chamber, Vega passed through corridors filled with coalition citizens. Some nodded in respect. Others shrank back in fear. All of them watched her with new understanding. Humanity had been barred from war for a reason. Now they remembered why. In the docking bay, Major Harper waited by the shuttle that would return them to Earth. How did it go? He asked. About as expected, Vega replied. They're afraid of us again. Harper nodded thoughtfully. Fear, respect. It's all the same out here. No, Vega said firmly. It's not. And that's something we need to remember. She looked out at the stars, thinking of Earth and the long journey home. We showed them what we can do. Now we need to show them what we choose not to do. The shuttle departed Canberra Station, carrying the human combat teams back to Earth. Behind them, they left a galaxy that had been reminded of humanity's terrible effectiveness in warfare and a new understanding of why peace was worth maintaining. The awakening protocol had served its purpose. The sleeping predator had awakened, fought, and now returned to its rest. But the galaxy would not soon forget what it had witnessed, and neither would humanity.